The cool November air of Manchester bit at her cheeks as Lydia Morell, a masseuse at a popular Swedish sauna, finally left her workplace. It was 2:45 a.m. on November 2nd, 1973. The shift had been long and tiring. Her muscles ached from the strain, paradoxical for someone whose job was to relax others. Lydia longed only for her warm bed in her quiet home in Goffstown, a town nestled 8 miles west of bustling Manchester. But before heading home, she gave in to her friend Mark's persuasion to stop by the 24-hour diner, the Silver Spoon. Mark, a cheerful and slightly reckless student, always knew how to lift her spirits after a tough shift. They sat at a booth by the window, sipping hot coffee. Mark talked about his weekend plans, while Lydia, smiling wearily, mostly watched the few cars passing on the night street. The conversation touched on recent reports of strange lights in the sky that were being discussed all over New England. Mark dismissed it, calling it mass hysteria, but Lydia remained silent, although some inexplicable anxiety stirred within her. Just tired, she thought, saying goodbye to her friend. The next stop was a gas station on the outskirts of Manchester. While gasoline slowly filled the tank of her old Ford, Lydia looked up at the stars. The sky was clear, frosty, dotted with myriad cold sparks. Nothing suggested anything unusual. She paid the sleepy cashier, tossed an empty cigarette pack into the trash, and finally pulled out on a Highway 114, heading west towards home. The road was almost empty. Only occasional trucks broke the silence of the night. Lydia turned on the radio, but only a quiet, melancholic melody broke through the static. She had already left the city limits, plunging into the darkness of the suburbs, when she caught something strange in her peripheral vision, off to the right. A bright yellow light, hanging motionless above the tree line. At first, she thought it might be the landing lights of an airplane heading for the Manchester airport, but the light wasn't moving and seemed too low. A helicopter crossed her mind, but the characteristic sound of rotor blades couldn't be heard. After driving a bit further, Lydia noticed that other lights joined the yellow one, pulsating red and blue lights, flashing with no apparent pattern. A strange feeling washed over her. This didn't resemble any aircraft she knew. The light seemed unnaturally bright, almost mesmerizing. She drove for about a mile, but the object seemed to keep pace, maintaining the same position relative to her car, only now it looked larger and brighter. Its glow flooded the cabin with a soft, unearthly light. Approaching the intersection of Highways 114 and 114A, Lydia felt a chill run down her spine. Her hands trembled slightly. She reached for a cigarette, trying to calm her nerves, but the car's cigarette lighter treacherously failed to work. At that moment, the light in the sky suddenly went out, plunging the surroundings into pitch darkness. Lydia flinched, her heart pounding. A second of silence, and then the light flashed on again, but no longer to the right, but directly in front of her, slightly to the left of the road, blinding her. It was much closer. Instinctively, she hit the brakes, but immediately released the pedal, deciding it was safer to keep moving. Fear mingled with curiosity. She drove slowly towards Goffstown, and the light relentlessly drew closer, growing brighter. Now it wasn't just a light, but a distinct object. Its radiance was so intense that it illuminated the road better than her car's headlights. After a few agonizing minutes, the object hovered almost directly over the road, allowing Lydia to see it in detail. It was a sphere, perhaps 30 to 40 feet in diameter, emitting a warm orange-gold light. Its surface wasn't smooth but consisted of many tightly fitted hexagonal panels, resembling a honeycomb. These honeycombs shimmered slightly, as if made of mother-of-pearl. In the upper part of the sphere, a dark rectangular window or panel was visible. From roughly the central part of the object emanated those same red, green, and blue flashes she had seen earlier. Now they seemed like almost tangible beams of light shooting out in different directions. Along with the light came a sound, a high-pitched, piercing, monotonous hum that seemed to penetrate directly into her brain. It wasn't so much loud as it was grating, causing nausea and dizziness. Lydia covered her ears with her hands, but it didn't help. The sound was felt throughout her body, vibrating in her bones. And then the most terrifying thing happened. She tried to grip the steering wheel tighter to maintain control of the car and realized with horror that she couldn't take her hands off it. Her fingers felt glued to the wheel. Simultaneously, She felt a strange pressure in her head, a sensation as if her thoughts were no longer her own. An external force had taken control not only of her body, but also of the car. The gas pedal pressed itself to the floor. The car accelerated sharply. Lydia watched the speedometer in panic, 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. She hurtled down the night highway, utterly helpless. Through a haze of fear, she glimpsed the familiar outline of Westlawn Cemetery to the left of the road. Gravestones flashed past like ghostly silhouettes in the light of her headlights and the object's unearthly glow. The flying craft kept pace, descending even lower. It was now only a few feet from her driver's side door. Its radiance flooded the interior, and the piercing sound reached a crescendo. At that moment, Lydia managed to look into the dark window on the sphere. What she saw made her want to scream, but the sound stuck in her throat. Behind a panel resembling a control console with complex indicators sat a being. It was humanoid in shape, but definitely not human. Gray, wrinkled skin stretched over a disproportionately large head. The face was flat, almost noseless, with a thin slit for a mouth. But the most memorable feature was the eyes, huge, slanted, completely black, without whites or pupils. The being slowly turned its head and looked directly at Lydia. The gaze of those bottomless eyes paralyzed her. And then she felt it again, an intrusion into her mind. But this time it wasn't just a feeling of control, but a clear message arising directly in her consciousness. Without words, do not be afraid. The message was devoid of emotion, cold and detached, which only made it more terrifying. Her body trembled, tears streamed down her cheeks. Do not be afraid, raced through her thoughts. I'm going to die. Perhaps it was a desperate surge of adrenaline or a momentary lapse in the object's control, but Lydia managed to muster the remnants of her will. She slammed on the brakes with all her might. The car screeched its tires, but its speed began to decrease. As soon as she passed the cemetery, the controls seemed to weaken. Her hands were able to leave the wheel. Without a second's hesitation, she swerved sharply towards the first house she saw with a porch light on and braked so abruptly that she was thrown forward. Without turning off the engine or the headlights, Lydia leaped out of the car. The flying object still hovered over the road behind her, bathing everything in its strange light and emitting the unbearable sound. Ignoring the furious barking of a German shepherd in the yard, Lydia ran to the house's kitchen entrance and began pounding on the door with her fists and feet. Help! Please, open up. They're chasing me. Aliens! Help! She screamed, covering her ears to somehow muffle the piercing hum. The door flew open. On the threshold stood an elderly man and woman in bathrobes, the Baudouin couple. Seeing the young woman frantic with terror, they pulled her inside without a word. Lydia collapsed onto the hallway floor, sobbing and mumbling about a flying saucer and a creature with black eyes. Mrs. Baudouin tried to calm her, bringing her a glass of water. Mr. Baudouin, frowning, went out onto the porch. He carefully scanned the sky and the road, but saw nothing unusual. The strange light had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Only Lydia's car stood forlornly in the distance, its engine running and headlights on. Despite the lack of visible evidence, Lydia was in such a distraught state that Mrs. Baudouin decided to call the police. Soon, Goffstown police officer Daniel Ubinville arrived. He inspected the scene and checked Lydia's car. Then he listened to the young woman's incoherent, terrified account. Lydia was still trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Officer Ubinville, pragmatic and accustomed to various late-night calls, regarded her story skeptically. In his report, he made a note: witness possibly under the influence of alcohol or drugs, although there were no obvious signs of this, apart from her evident state of shock. Later, this incident attracted the attention of researchers of anomalous phenomena. Walter Webb, a well-known ufologist, studying the report, noted that the planet Jupiter was indeed unusually bright in that part of the sky that night. However, as he himself acknowledged, this could in no way explain the detailed description of the object, the sound, the loss of control over the car, the being Lydia saw, or her state of panic. Webb also highlighted an intriguing coincidence. The Lydia Morell incident occurred just 100 miles from Exeter, New Hampshire, and relatively close to the site of the famous Betty and Barney Hill abduction, which had happened 12 years earlier. Was this merely a chain of coincidences, Or had the dark night roads of New England